She has inspired me and awakened a kind of a real thirst for knowledge on how she makes the magic happen, how she makes me feel so good.
Jo is quite crazy, but she knows her stuff.
Thanks for doing this, Joanne. How are you? How's your experience at Elevate been till now? You're on the second day now.
Oh, do you know what? It's just fabulous. Just being back in the rooms with people. I know that we were here last year, but it's even busier this year,
right,
which is great. So it's really vibrant and just so nice to sort of actually say hello to people, and rather than online.
Yeah,
so,
in the real world.
Yes.
Yes. I remember, when we were hit by COVID, and that's the first time somebody told me, why don't you do a Zoom call? I said, what the fuck is a Zoom call? And they said, no, you know what? It's like a web call. So I said, why are you calling it a Zoom call? And I think Zoom made it so big during COVID.
Yeah.
All thanks to people across the world who were in industries which were people facing. We were as a fitness industry, we are all about actually talking to people, meeting people, shaking hands, giving high fives.
Yep.
And all that finished, and this one web tool came in, changed the way, and people said, you know what, the future is going to be, nobody's going to go to the gyms, and it's going to be all virtual. And what happened in last 12 months is, most people have got back, most people want to get back, there is still an amount of fear. And the reason I'm saying all this is because you're doing some wonderful work. And how do you think that contributes to the way the industry is getting back on its feet?
Well, I think one of the key things that you said there was the connections.
Yes.
And we're in the industry that is about building rapport. It's about connecting with people. It's about delivering an experience.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, we were fortunate that because we're an education provider, we had already been doing a lot of our work online. So that wasn't too new for us. And so we were able to sort of step in and help people. I run a support group for female fitness trainers. And the downside of that, I was literally on Zoom from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night.
So much for work-life balance.
I know, and I'm sat still. And I'm like, no, well, a lot of the time I would be getting up, and just moving around. But with that, one of the things that I found that trainers struggled with as well going online was suddenly they haven't got all their tools, they haven't got their kit, they haven't got these, and even, therapists as well, that they can't touch their clients. And what I found amazing about that was if they were still good at rapport and connections and experience, their business didn't suffer.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important learning lesson as well. And those trainers that also had the confidence to be able to deliver a movement experience, know their biomechanics, so they could load a body, hit energy systems, create power, then they were still delivering those experiences. So what I was saying is a coffee's a coffee. It doesn't matter whether you get it in Starbucks or I'm trying to think of one in Australia, I can't remember, Pete's in America. It doesn't matter where you get your coffee from, it's still coffee.
Right.
So I was kind of trying to get people to say, stop saying it's, do you want online or, wherever the venue, it's the same product.
Yeah.
That comes down to, I'm jumping ahead there, but what you're charging, because that was the other thing, is people are like, well, I'm doing it online, so shall I do it cheaper?
Yeah, and I don't know why, but people, and this is something that I couldn't get my head around. I used to tell my friends who took online that shouldn't it be cheaper? I said, it's the same number of hours the guy is giving you.
What did you do? Just train one leg?
Yeah.
You could still got to train the whole body, right?
So, and the guys, and in fact, it's more difficult to get the results when you're an online coach because you're not in the physical world with them. You have to be more, like you rightly said, they didn't have the tools. And the trainer had to be more diligent when he was doing it online because you can't just sit on the other side of the camera and look at the guy and, so the entire process for a trainer to migrate from the real world into the world where, web came in and you were supposed to do exactly the same thing and get the results was so difficult for some people. A lot of people were camera conscious, one.
Yep.
Right? Second, a lot of people had to, kind of adapt to not being there. And it's difficult to build rapport when you're not in the same room with people. So if I had an old client, so example, I was your personal trainer, and we went online, it's good because we already have a rapport.
Yeah.
But to build rapport online from scratch, I saw a lot of trainers struggling with that. So as an education provider, how did you how did you manage that piece? Especially the new ones, the guys who are just newbies in the industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, what we did is we did set up a support group for people, and there are things that are missed that can be taught. And I think some of the issues lay with the education that trainers have, and not being given the tools, and perhaps relying too much on kit as opposed to understanding biomechanics and energy systems. So that's the first part.
Right.
You need to know your craft.
Right.
But then my background is actually an actress. And so a lot of things that I did was going to drama school. I was a professional actress for a while.
Wow.
And the fitness was actually the thing that I did in between jobs, let's just say, because nobody wanted to make me famous. But then I started to love the fitness industry even more. But taking some of the tools that I learnt there, and I think in every industry, if we keep focusing on our own industry, we don't learn.
Right.
Whereas if we open the door and go, what are they doing really well?
Right.
What are the NHS doing really well in building rapport in this time? How can I connect with my clients? One of the things I also did, because I still need to work on these aspects, is take up improv classes. And so I took a coach who's in LA, Dave Rosowski. He's absolutely awesome. I think he kept me sane, actually. But using these sorts of tools, and one of the big things you mentioned, the camera. And when we're in the gym, as a trainer, you need to be aware of your spatial relationship with your client. You need to be listening to every single cue that they're giving you from the moment they walk through the door. Posture is about somebody's mood. It's their best way of holding their body according to what's going on in their life. So rather than me judging it, I'm actually going, Doris doesn't look as upright as she normally is. So what's going on, Doris?
But it's very difficult to do that when you're online. When you're in the same room, you feel the energy. But when you're on the web, it's very hard to understand the person, in terms of what they're going through. How do you kind of address that?
You see, it can be difficult.
Right.
But I think if you step back and take the time, you will see how somebody moves. I mean, and even I've had situations where I can only see, the top half of a body, but I know as soon as their left arm goes up that something's happened to their right foot. And I know when they're not used the right leg because I can see that in the shoulder. And I will say, can you move your camera so I can at least see your whole body? But I think that obviously starting off with looking at the person and really looking, that the way somebody speaks, the speed in which they speak, the depth of breath that they take, be aware of their spatial awareness within that camera. All of those things give you tools.
Right.
And what I found that worked for my students was to actually step back and have a look at where different people were in relationship to that camera. And then also to use that if you were teaching a class or if you were doing your one-to-one, those points where the session is getting tough, to make yourself come into the camera a little bit closer, make sure that your eyes are in there. What are you doing? That's so you can still create that, and that will have an influence on that person. They
100%.
will react. And
100%.
If you hone in those skills, then it does get easier. It's not easy at first, but there are definitely things.
So did you change the way you deliver your program? Like you said that you were doing online coaching for people, but you were doing online coaching for people who are actually going to go in the real world and deliver the training, not for people to become online coaches. So did you kind of change the content? Did you do courses for people who are going to be only online coaches? Because I know a lot of people who've now completely moved, and we've lost about 50% of the workforce across the world. I don't know if you know this, but 50% of the workforce is gone forever. And the reason they've gone is, as gyms, we used to either have people on rent or on hours, and they were running their own business. Technically, they were not employees of the gym.
Yep.
Right. And if you're not employees of the gym, you were making money paying rent to the gym, and now you suddenly realize you don't need to pay rent to the gym, and you can make more money, and it's more scalable because you're not spending time traveling, and you can do all this online, and you're actually going to get paid the same amount of money, if not more. because also opens the entire world for you. So if you're in a developing part of the world and you've got a client in the developed part of the world, you can't kind of charging them more than what you could charge in your own country. So you lost a lot of people in the workforce who went across the globe. So
Yep.
I have people in India who've got clients in Australia, in the UK, in the US, and if you're good with your work, it doesn't matter where you are as long as you're doing it online. So with that in mind,
Yep.
how did you kind of change your curriculum to kind of, I would say, there was a profession called the fitness trainer. I would think there's another profession called the fitness online trainer, and those two are different. While their subject matter expertise is very similar or
Yep.
same, but their approach is extremely different in terms of getting their clients to actually executing and delivering a training. Did you
Yeah.
kind of change the courses? Did you create new courses for this?
We attract the personal trainer that still wants to do things one-to-one.
Right. And online and offline both? Or
Yep, both
Okay.
online and offline.
Right.
And of course, some of those have set up then an online program where they're facilitating,
Right.
people check-ins, those
Right,
types
right,
of things.
absolutely.
And I think that is important to establish that difference, because to me, personal training is a personal
Yeah,
experience.
so I completely appreciate it. And I'm only talking about the one-to-one training.
Yep.
So say if I was, and this is very interesting because this is my personal interest, I would want to understand this. Say if I want to be a personal trainer,
Yeah.
and I came to you and said, you know what, I'm going to do personal training but only online, and it's going to be one-on-one. Now, I would believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, this skill set is not the same skill set that's required to deliver a one-to-one training in the real physical world inside of a gym. This is my view. What do you think about this?
I think it's great. I was doing a talk yesterday on opinions. I can see where you're coming from. However, I think that our product is getting people moving.
Right.
That's
True.
our product.
Yeah.
And all we really have is that ability to biomechanically move someone, give them the right exercise at the right time.
Right.
And then we have to make sure that we're matching the right energy systems.
Right.
Okay, so we need to make sure that we're at the right load, the right volume, the right intensity for the right amount of time.
Absolutely.
They're the two key things wherever they are.
Right.
But then the other thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we deliver that in a way that blows their socks off. That they love that session so much that they can't help raving about it. And that means matching the biomechanics so that if you've got a client that loves to get up 2 days later, like someone who's like a personal trainer that likes to get up 2 days later and go, I can't walk, my butt's on fire, then you need to know that as a trainer you're going to hit that hip in
Right.
flexion and internal rotation in as many different ways as possible.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you want them to feel it in the session, you probably want to go for a bit more adduction because you want to get that glute med and you want to be able to then go, ooh, that hurts,
Yeah.
rather than relying on a little flimsy band, which doesn't actually do much.
Right.
And then you've got to make sure that in the session, as I said, that you are hitting the right energy system. Is that the person that loves to feel a bit sick? I do have a couple of those.
Yeah.
And then I have others that want to feel like they're not working at all. Now, my son, for example, he's a typical 19-year-old that wants to be buff. I've just realised he's 20, so I hope he doesn't listen to this. Like, Mum doesn't even know how old I am. And he's 20, he just wants to be buff, and he wants to work in creatine phosphate. He wants to lift heavy. He wants to get hold of those high threshold motor units.
Yeah.
So it's all about knowing your client. So it comes back down to the key is rapport. Know how they like to feel. Our product, it's not tangible. It's how you make them feel, how they talk about you. But the missing thing is how you take someone on an experience. Like if you go to the cinema and you come out and you just go, oh my God, that was amazing. And you go in, they've set the scene. The guy's there with his loving wife, everything's fantastic, and then he wakes up and the bedroom's on fire, or whatever it is, or they've left, but and then you spend the whole journey going on it. Faster, what we do is we look at that side of it. What's underneath the programming? How are you delivering that experience?
Right.
And remembering that I mean, when I first started in the fitness industry, what you did was you walk into the gym and you look for the biggest guy in the gym
Yeah.
that had probably just done an ultra fit
Yeah.
competition.
Yeah.
He probably wasn't even qualified, and you followed him around the gym.
Yeah.
And that was your personal training. Whereas now, our clients expect you to be level 3, level 4.
Yeah.
They expect you to have specialist programs as well. They also come in telling you what they think you should do for them, because
Absolutely.
has anybody ever been to the dentist and said, I'd like you to use the 74.2 drill on my left tooth? I was like, and so with that, our clients are privy to a lot of information.
Yeah.
A lot of information that's conflicting and confusing.
Yeah.
TikTok, Instagram, influencers, all of those sorts of things. And
Nothing backed by science. Absolute
No.
flimsy stuff on the internet. And I keep telling people, don't be a Google personal trainer. And people try to train themselves. It's like, like you said, I think our industry is very undermined. People think that the personal trainer is somebody who's actually not been able to do anything in life and was an absolute dickhead, couldn't do anything, so he becomes a personal trainer.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. It's a very difficult profession to be in. You start your day before most of the world wakes up,
Yep.
right? You work 12 to 14 hours a day because your peak hours in the gym are morning and evening.
Yeah.
Most trainers get to sleep in the afternoon because in the mornings they are awake. So 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m. they're working. They go back and they come back 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. and then they work again. It's such a difficult profession. I don't think we get enough due for our, I have the highest respect for personal trainers. They don't have, and all this on one side, they have to keep themselves fit as well.
Yeah.
So they need to have the right
They
sleep.
get the judgment, yeah.
Come on, how many of us will go to a personal trainer who doesn't look good? You want the personal trainer to kind of look good. And for that to happen, he needs to have good money coming in. He needs to have the right supplementation. He needs to have the right sleep. He needs to get time to work out.
Yeah.
And with the kind of hours they do, it's not an easy job.
No, it's not. And I think you're right that trainers get into it because they're good people and they
Yeah.
want to help.
Yeah.
And again, that kind of turns back into what we're talking about, information.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time as well, then that can lead you to following another guru without potentially questioning them, or
Yep.
searching for the next latest project or technique, or I fell for quite a few.
All of us have.
Yeah, quite a few, and I'm sure I will again. But that's where I think that your call back to science is essential. But what I'm hearing a lot, we hear it in trade shows, we hear it constantly, and that is, it's evidence-based.
That's the new buzzword.
Oh yeah, this is evidence-based. Well, my dad told me that fairies existed. That was evidence-based.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's good evidence. He read the Daily Mail. I should have known better. But where are you getting your evidence from? And that's very different to scientific evidence.
Yeah.
And then not all scientific evidence is good.
Yeah.
Now it's the best that we've got.
Yeah.
Because the clever people, which I'm not, the clever PhDs, they come up with an idea. Yourself being a doctor, they come up with an idea, and then you get it tested. And then if you're lucky enough, somebody else tests it.
Yeah.
But that's for the academic world. We're not in the academic world.
We're not.
We are the providers of an experience. So what a lot of people, what I found that a lot of my students respond well to is going, well, what is it my client actually needs? Do they need their bloods tested? I've never had a client come into me and said, really need you to test my blood for me. Not had that. I've got, Elaine who comes in who just doesn't want to be with the 2 kids for the afternoon anymore, wants to feel better about herself, has lost a bit of self-esteem because her husband is staying out late most nights. That's what I get, and that never brings me to a blood test. And so from that point of view, we start to go, well, what are her hurdles? And maybe she's, since I've had the kids, I'm experiencing lower back pain, or I've got a shoulder injury. Well, that's when we go to the research.
Yeah.
That's when we look at the studies. But what we try and do, or what I try and help trainers to do, is to look at those questions and then read everything, because unfortunately we need to know what Elaine's read. So we need to know what she's reading on TikTok, we need to know what she's reading on Instagram. And then at that point, go to the scientific journals. We need to go, and I know we haven't got time to go into research now, but that's what I do in my motor skill application specialist, is go into the depth of that. But it's about, I'm not going to tell any trainer, and no one should tell a trainer what level of research they should work from.
Right.
But if you're always open to trying to raise that level,
by creating an environment where you can play, where you can fail, will then improve your overall performance, and really allowing people to go on that emotional journey throughout their training, I think will get people more excited about wanting to move.
then we're going to offer a better service.
Absolutely.
And that way, you know, getting back to the fact that I'm not a PhD and I still like Netflix, there has to be a way of getting rid of the studies that aren't relevant.
Correct.
So what I would say is read everything on the topic. The question is the toughest, but if you get a great question that doesn't have your bias in the actual question, then get rid of all the other studies. So if I'm looking at studies on pelvic floors, it's amazing how many of them are actually on guinea pigs. I'm like, we're not guinea pigs, or men. But you know, the guinea pigs ones are definitely the ones I'm going to sort of let go. But then you get left with a balance of best evidence available. And then using that to underpin the decisions that we make. It makes you rock solid as a trainer, because if you're using a technique but you've read all this research, you know why you're doing it, which is really different. And then if the research changes, you go, well, my client's success wasn't defined on the technique. It was defined on the fact that I read 100 studies, and now we get to change.
Yeah. And I think self-education is very, very important. I was speaking with Dean yesterday, Dr. Dean, and he's, we spoke about exactly the same. Most tests are being conducted on guinea pigs. They're not even, for supplements as well. Like we were talking about peptides yesterday.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we all look at saying studies done, and then you've got research based, and it's all. I think one big problem for our industry is too many Instagram influencers, too many people who don't have the right knowledge, are there on the online world, and you start believing. People don't understand what's the difference between research. I mean, 90% of what you search on Google doesn't tell you anything. It's just a search engine. Yeah. What you search is absolute garbage.
Yeah,
so
we give them the tools to actually get to the studies.
Yeah, and which is why I think it's so important that people know where to look for information.
Yep.
Right? It's not, yes, it's good to find where is the closest coffee shop to me on Google.
Yeah.
But you don't find a good research paper on Google because you don't know where to look.
But the point there as well is not looking for a good research paper. And I know that sounds really petty, but it's one of those things that we want to be right. As humans, we desperately want to be
all of
right.
Us, yeah.
I do. And so I spent a long time looking for papers that supported my bias.
Yeah.
And that can be a slippery slope, fallacy. And then... So really, we want to be broadening that. It's never one paper. How many times do you see people on Instagram or Facebook discussing this one study that came out about an ACL? One study isn't enough.
No, it isn't.
And going back to your point about supplements, although that science and research has, it could do better, it is the best we have.
Correct.
So supplements that aren't tested, that's a problem. That's
Absolutely.
a problem.
That
is a problem.
But they are there.
They are there. Yes. So it's being aware of those differences.
Yeah. So tell me, if you could talk more about your journey. How did you start? When did you start? So,
Yes.
not the product per se, but your entire journey as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
As somebody who. I think I have the highest respect for entrepreneurs. We create things out of thin air.
Well,
so tell me how did
I'm
this
maybe
start?
not that good at being the entrepreneur. There's loads more entrepreneurs that are much more successful than I. Just before we do, there was something that you said that I think is really important to sort of wrap up. You talked about personal trainers and how gyms have lost a lot of their team, and that was one of the things that we were discussing yesterday.
I'm speaking on the same today on the panel.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Well, that whole fact that it costs 3 times the amount to get a new client into a gym. So if we can spend money on retention, we're going to save money.
Yeah.
But also, if clubs start to look at, well, actually, with that money that they're saving, they could invest in their trainers and again build rapport, not just with their clients, their existing clients, but their trainers, because their trainers
are also their clients.
They are also their clients. Exactly.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know, yes, exactly. And I think that that's really key, because otherwise, now we won't get the quality trainer in the gym, but they will come if they're getting a community. Because I get a lot of trainers that come to me and they go, I really love working on my own, but I'm kind of quite lonely because the only people I talk to are my clients.
Yeah.
And they don't have that person to banter with and
Yeah.
you know, throw ideas.
It's not a good
say
place
to
to
them,
be in, honestly.
That's not right. What
Yeah.
are you doing that for, mate?
but it's not a good place to be. And I mean, I hear this a lot now. You know, people who, you know, trainers who got 10 or 12 clients, they're just stuck in their, you know, in their 4 walls.
Yep.
And they miss that energy of the gym.
Yeah.
I personally believe that trainers are going to get back to the industry, but I think gyms need to do a lot more to get the trainers back. It's about time we understand what is the responsibility of an operator
Yep.
in terms of their own workforce, right? As one of the things is part of the, you know, I'm the chair for the skills and the workforce group at World Active. As one of the things that we're trying to address now is, yes, there is standards that you need to follow for, you know, anatomy and personal training and what you need to do as a structured approach. But the other aspect of it, and I think which is more important, is helping trainers build their own business. Because a lot of these good trainers are extremely good at what they do in terms of personal training. And you mentioned that, you know, most of them are passionate about, they're good people.
Yeah.
They want to do well for people. But when they go into the gym for the first time, they realize they walked into a hostile environment, because you're now competing with trainers who've been there for 1 decade. They know how to build rapport. They know how to get clients. They already have clients. They've got results. And now you start competing with them. You're paying rent to the gym. You've just paid money to the training provider to get a training certification done.
Yep.
You got stars in your eyes. You think you'll make 5 grand and 8 grand a month. Yes, it is possible to do that, but doesn't happen in the first month. And a lot of people fall off the rails because they don't get the desired results. I think nobody's setting their expectations for them, and nobody's telling them how to build business. And without that, I don't think operators can survive. And it's absolutely incorrect on our part as operators to believe that trainers will do everything because it's their own business. No, it's not their business. It's your business to understand and help them build their business. But I don't think too many people are doing that.
I mean, this is where I will have to say, I would recommend that if anybody's struggling with any of those things, that they come and see it at Faster Health and Fitness, because that's exactly what we're passionate at
that's
doing.
the reason I'm making that
You
point,
know,
because you know what you're doing now is actually the need of the hour.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't believe you me, I know more than 150 operators across the world, and I can't emphasize more on this. Nobody is in a happy place when it comes to the number of trainers they've got in the system. Everybody's struggling.
Yep.
And the reason
100%.
and we are to be blamed. I mean, I've been a gym operator, I had 40 gyms, and we are to be blamed because we are not investing enough in our trainers to make sure that they are successful in what they're doing. It's not an easy place to be.
No, and you know, that's a lot of the work that we've been doing with Bob Squarey in getting the hybrid trainer as well, so that they're going personal training, they're bringing in that group exercise experience as well, and really appreciating those people. And if somebody does feel appreciated, you know, that goes a long way.
It does.
Yeah. Yes. So, well, my beginning really was sewing machine industry.
Really?
So here we are at a convention, because everything started. We did conventions.
Wow.
My parents had a sewing machine business.
When was this?
So, you know, we had when there was the big boom in knitting machines.
Yeah.
And so I remember being at the NEC in Birmingham. We had to get more staff in to count the cash. It was that long ago, and they had sort of satellite dishes that were being sold with, you got a satellite dish free with a sewing machine, and so like all the guys were like, yes, you can have that to their wives, which now we wouldn't do that because us women are stronger. We can do, we don't have to listen to you to make a decision on whether we buy a sewing machine or not. But it's funny that I then went into acting and then got into the fitness industry sort of through that, and it brought me back into setting up my own business and then working in education as well. Yeah.
So tell me the lowest point that you've ever had in your business, where you said, what, I don't think I'm doing the right thing, and let's just give up, and or you were hit with a very big failure, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, okay, so I kind of hinted on it before, but there was a point where I actually, everything was going well. So, I mean, you get to that point where everything's going great. I had a waiting list. My clients thought that I was amazing. And the reason is I had hooked on to some techniques. And basically, I was scraping. I don't know if you ever did all the scraping stuff. Well, I'm from the Midlands, so I'm a bit tight, so I wouldn't actually invest in the proper IAMS tool at the time. I got my spoon, so I was spooning everybody around Wimbledon. I was like, yes, I'll get anti-meniscus there, and spooning knees and spooning shoulders, and they were getting all this amazing range of motion in the session, and I thought, this is fantastic, and I think I had this moment. And then the company that I had learnt with, Faster, they emailed me and said, oh, that course that you did, we were wrong. We hadn't really checked the research. And that was their first time where they had that kick up the bottom of, because we didn't really use research. The fitness industry was based on dead people or bodybuilders. It wasn't really based on, that level of research. But then I was left with that dilemma, because I'm like, yeah, well, it kind of works. And I'm like, and then I was like, well, define works. And so on my thought process, it worked, because in the session they got great range of motion. And as a business model, it was brilliant, because they'd come back next week, they had a tiny bit better range of motion from like 4 weeks ago, but it had certainly gone back. And anybody who foam rolls, no, they continue to foam roll. And if it was actually doing the thing they thought or hoped it was doing, they wouldn't still need to be doing it, potentially. Now, this isn't to say if you're listening to this going, she doesn't like foam rolling. If you like foam rolling, absolutely 100% do it. But from when I read the research and scraping, what I realised I was doing was taking away movement time. I was taking away an opportunity for my clients to improve their performance quicker. And my job is to get people moving.
Right.
And so this was actually taking them further away from their goal. But that's not the real story, because the technique's not the issue. And if it wasn't harming someone, that's another conversation of thing. But for me, what was interesting was that I was told I should go and do the research. And you're talking to an actress. Like, the only research I did was what clothes should I wear for that particular event, or what was the history behind this particular part. And so it meant that I would say for about 3 or 4 years, I refused to. I would go to, gurus and look at their research and think, well, that follow, I'll follow Lorimer Moseley for a bit, or I'll follow Greg Lehman, or, and then I was like, stop it. All you're doing is just replacing one guru to the next. And so I gave up Netflix for a while, and with the help of Faster, I learnt a process. And this process is really super accessible. And from doing that, it was an absolute game changer, but it was horrible in that in-between time. And to go back to your clients and say, I'm not doing this anymore,
it's as good as saying I'm wrong, and it's very difficult to say. One thing that I appreciate about people, I've had a lot of people who worked with me, colleagues, bosses. You don't find too many people who can come back and say, what, I was wrong and I won't do this. That's a very because you feel all along you were doing something wrong, but it's not that. And I always say this: at the point of time when you were doing this, you believed what you're doing was right. I think that's the most important thing.
Yes.
As long as you believe what you're doing was right, and with whatever knowledge you had, you were delivering the best. it's okay, because I think integrity is the most important, and I think nothing else matters. There's a very good, I keep quoting this, and there's this American politician, Alan Simpson. He used to say, if you have integrity, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. And I think that's the most important thing, when you're doing this.
Absolutely, because I was working from the best level of evidence at that time.
Right.
And when we do start, we've done our level 2, level 3, we have to work from that point.
Yeah.
And then I just think as educators, we owe it to those coming through the industry to be able to raise those standards. Because if we raise those standards, we're going to get better results. And if we get better results, we're going to get more people in our gyms. And if we get more people in our gyms, we're going to be taken seriously as an industry if we ever go through another pandemic. So it's absolutely essential that we, and I guess the crux of it was my ego. The ego got knocked. I've fallen off a stage presenting. I've taken too many tops off and flashed. They were low moments. But I think addressing my ego is the hardest thing.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to do that. It's extremely difficult because you look at yourself in the mirror.
Yep.
And then you say, you suddenly feel, what have I been doing?
Yep.
And that's a difficult moment. And not too many people face this in their life, and not too many people are able to address it. It's always brushed under the carpet.
Well, it was John Hardy from Faster that helped me with that, because he is the only person I've ever met who said he was wrong. And all through the 30 years of the amount of investment I've made in my journey, different courses, I've never experienced that before.
Amazing. One, another question that I always want to ask people, especially with your kind of experience, in the fitness industry. As a trainer, you see a lot of people fresh, 20-year-old, 19-year-old, come into the industry, and they want to look up to mentors, right? They want to look up to people who've been successful, right? So as a service provider, as a training provider, if I am a trainer, and if I come to you, what do you do for me to, make me believe that, in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, I'll build a career for myself, right? And I have somebody who I can go back to even after the training is over. It's not that relationship you've built over those 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 12 weeks of training program, but it's a lifelong relationship. How do you work, with trainers on that front?
I think the first thing is to be in service of the trainer. So my intention is not to tell them to do anything. My intention is to find out as much as I can about their goals, to find out why those goals are important to them. I need to know intrinsically what motivates, what inspires them to be in the fitness industry. Some people are inspired by the financial aspect, some people are inspired by many different things, and particularly in the fitness space, I think that many people do have such personal stories that have inspired them through. And to start at that place is emotionally connected to them. And then it's easy.
Yeah.
Because once they've found that and they've acknowledged that, these are the things that they want. So basically I give them space and that time to express and open up what it is that really got them into this industry and what inspires them to be in it. And then take it from there.
Who are your biggest success stories? If you were to talk about some of your people who've studied with you and then done extremely well, who do you think?
There's so many, and I think for me there is nothing greater than having a trainer come to you that lacks confidence potentially, that has maybe not got their first client or has been training and they're struggling. They don't know what to charge. They haven't got that plan, but then to be able to sit with them and see them grow, I mean, that's just so rewarding. I've got a lady that I mentor at the moment, and she's fully booked with a waiting list,
Amazing.
She's doing her first talk today, and I'm
Really?
just like so thrilled for her. You know, it's just that's incredible, and to see that growth. So I feel very privileged, and I think, you know, and this is just maybe my experiences, but as a personal trainer, that is one of the things that inspires many people, seeing the growth. I'm personally not interested in a transformation program. That if that's your thing, that's fabulous. For me, I want to give my trainers the tools to be able to change lives. You know, one of my trainers works with a gentleman who has MS and polio, and you know, the way that she went through the research process that was very new to her, very scary to her, and came up with a way of meeting him where he was. His goals weren't to lift X, Y, Z. They were just to get out of bed without being lifted by a crane or his wife. You know, and that's very different. And so to me, yeah, those are the success stories.
One last question. You know, if you were to kind of compress your entire journey that you've had over the years, what have been your top learnings in terms of, if I'm a new personal trainer, what should I imbibe as values in myself to be a successful personal trainer?
I think it's a big question.
Yeah.
It's a really big question.
Save the best for the last.
Yeah. I think get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You know, surround yourself by awesome people. So, you know, get yourself a mentor. I set up the female fitness support group. We've got thousands of women in there. There's lots of free podcasts and webinars and information for them. But the important thing is to have that community. I would say as well to be comfortable with being wrong and challenge where you get your level of information from. Because if you can do that, you know why you're doing what you're doing, you're open to change, and you know, I know when I did group exercise, you're only as good as your last class, but try and remove that ego and go, what went well in there? You know, if you lose a client, rather than huffing, give yourself a moment to huff, but then come back to the table and go, what could I have done better? How could I have improved the experience for my client? Continue to learn. But the mentor and getting yourself around people to get you to look at things differently. So borrow and steal from every other industry. You know, hotel industry, they're doing that. Because one thing is I see is, okay, this is what we need to deliver consistently. No. Because if consistently becomes good, it then becomes disappointing.
Right.
So what we have to do is actually go, my client loved this experience, how can I make it better? When that member walked through my gym, they loved the changing rooms, they loved the music, the ambience, what can I do better? You know, and it usually comes down to the thing that we first started off with, which is rapport.
Yep.
You know, the hotel that I go to that is plush, that has an espresso machine and a mirror that doesn't box up. Now I expect that. I'm spoiled. I don't always expect that. But you know, that's if I'm in a hotel that's really lovely. Now I'm like, what? There's no espresso machine. But the hotel that's always a winner, that is personal touch. Not just the hello, you've arrived, I know that they've checked that and they know that, but the person who you talk to at breakfast who later on says, did you have a great day when you went to the cathedral? That they remembered and they took the time. So putting that into 3, get comfortable with being wrong, analyse your successes and any learning opportunities, those things that didn't go so well. Get yourself around mentors that will help support you through that journey and keep improving the experience you deliver.
Thank you so much for doing this, Joanne. I really appreciate it. It's been a wonderful chat. You know, I think my viewers are going to take a lot from this, and especially, you know, personal trainers who are starting off and people who've hit that plateau where they want to grow to the next level. Awesome.
Thank
Brilliant
you
discussion.
so much for having me. It's an absolute honour to be with you today. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day.